Damien fixed his gaze on her for a long, aching moment, as though speaking without words. "Elena," he finally whispered, his voice unsteady. "You've never left me. Not in thought, not in spirit. I've built entire walls pretending you didn't matter, but I'm tired now. Tired of lying to myself." His shoulders sagged as he leaned closer, eyes shimmering with vulnerability. "I don't want to fight it anymore. I don't want to live without you." Before logic, guilt, or memory could cut in, he leaned across the table and kissed her. Right there in that secluded booth with soft jazz humming in the background, Damien pressed his lips to Elena's, and years crumbled. The silence, the distance, the pretending, it shattered in one electric instant. Her lips were still at first, rigid with disbelief, but then they moved, hesitant and then certain. Despite years of ache and anger, the love she thought dead still breathed. The universe seemed to pause, as if it had been waiting for this reunion all along. She didn't stop him. She didn't pull away. Because in that kiss was everything she had ever buried: loneliness, longing, and devotion she had once tried to hate. Damien was no longer the boy who teased in crowded rooms. He was the man who had unknowingly shaped her entire womanhood. Now he finally reached for her, finally recognized her. Their kiss deepened until her body trembled with old recognition. She wanted to hate herself for yielding, but she couldn't. This was him, the one she had cried over for years, whispered to in the dark, cursed and adored in equal measure. She pushed lightly against his chest, not in rejection but in breathless restraint. "Damien," she murmured. He rested his forehead against hers, exhaling raggedly. "I know. We shouldn't. Not here." Yet the spark between them was undeniable, public restaurant or not. His next words were soft but pleading. "Come home with me." She hesitated, her chest rising and falling, until she finally whispered, "Yes." That was all he needed. His penthouse overlooked the city, sleek and minimal, like his guarded self. Black leather couches, polished shelves stacked with medical journals, vinyl records of old jazz. As soon as the door closed, he didn't wait. He pulled her into his arms again. This kiss wasn't tentative. It was hungry, desperate, laden with years of denial. She melted into him, her fingers curling into his shirt as his hands pressed firm, then gentle, on her waist. The world narrowed to touch, breath, and the aching need of lost time. Elena whispered his name like a prayer. He kissed her neck, her collarbone, her trembling skin. "I want you," he confessed hoarsely. Her answering smile was soft, daring. "I know." From there was no turning back. Their hands, their bodies, their souls recognized what had always been inevitable. Time and distance ceased to matter. They moved together as though the years apart had only been a prelude to this collision. When it was over, Damien held her tightly, not out of obligation but because letting go felt unthinkable. She laid her head against his chest, finally at peace in a way she hadn't known in years. She didn't recall falling asleep, only waking to the warmth of lips against her cheek and the smell of fresh coffee. Her lashes fluttered open to find Damien leaning over her, shirtless, smiling softly, a mug in hand. "Good morning," he murmured. She sat up slightly, clutching the sheets. "Did you sleep?" He nodded. "Only once you did." There was something new in his eyes, maybe fear, maybe peace, maybe both. When he handed her the cup, their fingers brushed. "You look different," he said. "Like a dream I've had so many times. I'm scared to wake up." Elena rolled her eyes, but her smile betrayed her. "Dramatic," she teased. He shook his head. "Honest." And as sunlight poured through the window, painting them gold, they both knew nothing would be the same again. Cambridge had never glowed brighter. Spring sunlight threaded gold into every corner of King's College, weaving light through robes and caps tossed into the air. Elena Alvarez stood still in the courtyard, her black doctoral gown sweeping around her ankles, the deep blue sash of her pharmacy degree resting across her shoulder. Around her, friends laughed, petals danced in the breeze, professors clapped, but her eyes were searching, scanning the crowd. And then she saw him. Damien Morales stood beneath the ancient stone archway, his tall frame wrapped in a flawless ash-gray suit. He was surrounded by professors and graduates, but in Elena's eyes, he seemed completely alone, radiant as though the entire courtyard existed just for him. He didn't smile. He rarely did. He simply nodded politely at those around him, his certificate clutched loosely in his hand, his presence commanding more than words ever could. Elena's chest tightened. She gripped her own certificate until her knuckles whitened, unable to look away. He turned. Their eyes locked. Across the chaos, across cheers and flashes of cameras, It was only them. Seconds stretched into minutes, time bending the way it always did around Damien. His solemn gaze met her hazel-brown eyes, his expression unreadable, but his stare lingered just a fraction too long. Her stomach fluttered wildly. Then, just as suddenly, he looked away. And when she glanced again, he was gone, vanished into the crowd like smoke. Her parents reached her then, wrapping her in warm embraces, voices filled with pride. Friends called her for photographs. But Elena's mind was elsewhere, stuck on the stone archway and the ghost who had just disappeared. Memories pulled her backward, 5 years earlier in Lagos, long before Cambridge, long before she became Dr. Alvarez. It was one of those sweltering Saturdays when the power was out, the generator droning in the background. She had been perched at the top of the stairs, pretending to study biology notes, though all she really did was listen. Victor, her older brother, and Damien had been in the living room, laughing and bickering about FIFA goals, the way they always did. To Elena, only one voice mattered, Damien's. She had adored him since she was 10, though he never saw her as more than Victor's little sister. To him, she was a background figure, part of the household, nothing more. But at 15, Elena wasn't a child anymore. Her body had sharpened into womanhood, and her restless imagination had filled with thoughts no girl should have about her brother's best friend. Yet think them, she did. That afternoon she heard his footsteps heading to the kitchen. Her heart pounded as she crept down barefoot, peering around the corner. There he was, taller now, broader, his tank top clinging to him like a second skin. He moved with an easy confidence that made her stomach twist. He opened the fridge, grabbed a bottle of water, tilted his head back to drink. She held her breath, mesmerized. And then, his gaze flicked toward the hallway. Their eyes met. The world stopped. Damien didn't flinch, didn't call her out. His gaze lingered just a beat too long before he turned back, closed the fridge, and walked away. Elena sagged against the wall, flushed with equal parts shame and thrill. What she didn't know was that later that night, Damien lay awake in Victor's room, replaying that stolen glance. He had noticed her, more than noticed. And though a foolish oath made years ago beneath the mango tree forbade him from ever crossing that line with his best friend's sister, that moment had changed everything. She wasn't invisible anymore. She was the most forbidden thing he had ever wanted. And in his heart, he knew, it was only a matter of time. The rain whispered softly against the windows of Damien's flat in Lagos, a sharp contrast to the storm brewing inside him. He stood unmoving, eyes locked on the skyline, whiskey glass heavy in his hand. The city glowed, but in his chest, shadows lingered. Elena. She had been different at graduation, older, more poised, yet untouchable, as if she had built walls no one could breach again. Damien knew why. He was the reason. From the very beginning, she had been his quiet secret, the presence he could never escape. Every glance she cast, every flicker of affection she tried to hide, he had seen it all. And he had wanted her to. But he hadn't acted. No, he had done worse. He had crushed her. The memory haunted him. 5 years earlier, one late afternoon, the garden behind the Alvarez home. The sun had painted the sky in orange hues, making every shadow stretch longer, sharper. Damien had been seated under the jacaranda tree, earbuds in, flipping through a medical journal, when Elena appeared. She had walked slowly, hesitantly, her hands trembling at her sides. Her voice, when it finally emerged, was fragile but resolute. "I like you," she had whispered, eyes fixed on the grass. "I've liked you for a long time." Damien had frozen, unprepared. Panic surged through him. He had stood too quickly, brushing invisible dust from his jeans, his words like ice. "Elena, you're Victor's sister. This isn't right. You shouldn't say things like that." The hurt in her eyes had been instantaneous. She blinked rapidly, as if to banish tears, straightened her spine, and walked back into the house. But the damage was done. He hadn't followed, hadn't explained, hadn't confessed that he felt the same. Because loyalty to Victor, to their childish pact of never touching each other's sisters, had outweighed the truth burning in his chest. That day, Damien had broken something more than her heart. He had shattered her trust. And she had never forgiven him. Back in the present, Damien sank onto his leather couch, whiskey untouched. He had kept tabs on her all those years. Quietly, secretly, always at a distance. He had watched her rise through academia, excel in every milestone, bloom without him. And yet, every time he scrolled through her achievements and saw no sign of another man, no boyfriend, no partner, his selfish heart had unclenched. She was still his, in some unspoken way. But now she was back in London, and fate had played its hand. Elena Alvarez had zipped up her white lab coat at St. Anne's Medical Institute, her new position as pharmacological consultant commanding respect. She wasn't Victor's kid sister anymore. She was formidable, brilliant, and untouchable. Across the hospital wing, Damien tied the strings of his surgical scrubs. He had resisted St. Anne's offers for months, yet here he was, finally accepting. Something had pulled him, whispered, "Don't leave yet. There's something undone." And maybe fate had known exactly what it was. That morning, chaos erupted, an emergency brain surgery requiring delicate pharmacological agents. When the lead nurse barked for pharmacy, Damien barely glanced up, until someone collided with his chest. A tablet slipped, nearly crashing to the floor. His hand shot out instinctively to steady the figure. The scent of lavender and mint. The familiar warmth. Elena. Their eyes met, and 5 years evaporated. His voice cracked as he whispered her name. She froze, hating the way her throat went dry, hating how her knees weakened even now. And yet, her body remembered. So did his. "Elena," Damien murmured, stepping closer as though afraid she'd vanish. "You look breathtaking." Her heart twisted with rage and longing. 5 years ago, he hadn't seen her. Now he called her breathtaking. Before she could answer, a nurse interrupted. "Dr. Morales, the team is ready." Damien glanced at Elena, desperation in his eyes. "As soon as I step out of that theater," he vowed, "I'm coming to find you. Please, give me 10 minutes. And then he was gone, swallowed by the operating room doors. Elena stood frozen in the hallway, heart pounding, torn between fury and the aching hope she had never truly buried. When Damien finally emerged from the 12-hour surgery, exhausted yet triumphant, Elena was gone. Applause echoed around him, colleagues clapping his back, nurses grinning, but none of it touched him. His eyes darted everywhere until he found a note in his locker. "Dr. Morales, I've gone home. I thought it would be rude to disappear without a word. You know how to find me. Elena." He didn't hesitate. 20 minutes later, he was standing outside her flat in South Kensington, rain misting down. When Elena opened the door, barefoot in a grey lounge set, her hair tied loosely back, Damien almost lost his breath. "I need to talk," he said quickly. She arched a brow. "It's past 9, Damien. There's a restaurant 2 blocks away. Please." She should have slammed the door, but instead, she sighed. "Fine." Moments later, they were seated in a dimly lit corner booth. The soft hum of jazz filled the silence. He leaned forward, hands clasped. "I'm sorry, Elena. For everything. Be specific." Her tone was sharp. "For the garden. For the years of silence. For pretending you didn't exist when all I wanted was to be near you." His voice cracked. "You were young. I was confused. You were Victor's sister, off limits. But I never stopped wanting you." Her eyes narrowed. "You laughed with every girl in the city. You made them feel seen. But me? You walked past me like I was invisible. I loved you, Damien. I still." She bit her lip before the words slipped too far. "I asked myself every day why I wasn't enough." His face collapsed. "You were more than enough. I hated myself. I thought you deserved better than the broken man I was. You should have let me decide that," she said softly, bitterness breaking through. "I know. And there's something else." His hands rubbed together nervously. "Victor and I made a pact when we were kids. Never touch each other's sisters. Stupid. Childish. But I took it seriously." Her voice cut like glass. "You had no right to choose for me." "I know," he whispered. "But I also know what I want now. I want you." And then, unable to hold back, he leaned across the table and kissed her. The dim light, the low music, it all blurred as their lips met. Years of silence collapsed into heat. At first, Elena resisted, but then her heart betrayed her. She kissed him back, surrendering to a truth she had tried to bury. When she finally pulled back, her forehead rested against his. Both were trembling. "Come with me," he breathed. Her whispered yes sealed it. His penthouse was sleek and masculine, polished wood, black leather, shelves of medical journals. The moment the door closed, Damien swept her into his arms. Their kiss turned fierce, his hands urgent as though time itself might snatch her away again. She melted against him, whispering his name like a secret prayer. Clothes fell, barriers crumbled, and at last, nothing stood between them. Later, tangled in sheets, Damien held her tightly, his lips pressed to her hair. For the first time, Elena felt peace, not the hollow applause of achievement, but the kind that whispered, "You are chosen. You are loved." The next morning, she woke to the scent of coffee and Damien's lips on her cheek. Shirtless, smiling, he handed her a mug. "You look different," he murmured. "How?" she teased. "Like a dream I've had too many times. One I'm terrified to wake from." Sunlight spilled across their skin, golden and warm. Whatever this was, it was real now. Weeks passed after that first night in Damien's penthouse, and neither he nor Elena could stay away. What began as stolen hours became entire nights, then weekends, then days blurred into weeks of love that felt inevitable. They met in her flat on rainy evenings, in his office with blinds drawn, even, recklessly, in her hospital office once. What they shared was chaotic yet tender, born of years of buried desire now set free. But fate was not done testing them. One Saturday morning, Elena stepped out of the shower, a towel wrapped around her. She heard her front door unlock and assumed Damien had arrived early. Heart fluttering, she stepped into the living room, only to freeze. Victor stood there, suitcase in hand, eyes wide. Behind him, Damien appeared from the kitchen, shirtless, holding 2 mugs of coffee. The silence was volcanic. Victor's voice broke first. "What the hell, Damien? In my sister's house. Half naked." Damien set the mugs down carefully, raising his palms. "Victor, I can explain." "You'd better. Because last time I checked, we had a pact. You swore you'd never touch her." Elena stepped forward, clutching her towel tighter. "I'm not something he touched, Victor. I love him. I've loved him since we were teenagers." Her voice trembled but carried steel. "And now he sees me too." Victor faltered, anger softening into something more complicated. Damien asked quietly, "Let me talk to him." Elena nodded. Outside, on a bench, the 2 men faced each other. Damien's voice was low. "I should have told you sooner. I should have come to you like a man. But I was afraid, of losing you, of losing her. I've loved Elena longer than I want to admit. And this isn't a fling. She's my future." Victor stared at him, breathing heavily. "You broke our promise." "I know," Damien said firmly. "And I'd break it again before I'd lose her." Silence stretched, then Victor muttered, "She's not a little girl anymore." "I know. And I will never hurt her again." At last, Victor exhaled and looked away. "I've never seen her look at anyone the way she looks at you. Just treat her right." "Always," Damien vowed. When the families were told, the storms began. Elena's father, Chief Alvarez, studied Damien with sharp eyes. "You hurt her once." "I did," Damien admitted. "And I've hated myself for it every day. But now I love her openly, fully, without fear. I will honor her." Chief Alvarez nodded slowly. "Then act like it. This isn't a game. You marry her, or you walk away." Valeria Morales, Damien's mother, was less surprised. "A mother always knows," she said, lips curved. "If you mean this, make it formal. No more secrets." And so it was. Families gathered. Traditions observed. Gifts exchanged. Elena, radiant in emerald lace and coral beads, walked with regal grace. Damien, in a wine-colored agbada, waited with pride. When he lifted her veil, he whispered, "You're everything I'll spend my life earning." The ceremony was both joyous and solemn, the beginning of a forever they had once believed impossible. Months later, Elena stood barefoot in their London nursery, rocking their baby daughter, Sophia. Hazel-eyed like her mother, calm like her father, she was the living proof of love that had survived silence, pride, and time. Damien entered quietly, still in scrubs, and paused at the doorway, his eyes soft. "2 queens in one room," he whispered. He kissed Sophia's forehead, then Elena's lips. That night, as rain pattered softly against the window, Elena asked, "What do you think our next chapter looks like?" Damien smiled, brushing a thumb along her cheek. "Quiet. Overflowing. Forever." She leaned into his chest, whispering, "This time, we're not wasting a single second." And they never did.